The shuttle's engines hummed as it descended through the thin atmosphere of the unnamed moon. Dr. Keiko Tanaka pressed her face against the viewport, studying the gray wasteland below. Broken structures jutted from the surface like ancient bones, remnants of a civilization that had vanished centuries ago. "Are you sure about this, Doc?" Martinez asked from the pilot's seat. "This place gives me the creeps." Keiko smiled. "That's exactly why we're here. The Vorathai built this facility 800 years ago, then abandoned it. No one knows why." The shuttle landed with a gentle thud. Keiko gathered her equipment and stepped onto the dusty surface. The facility loomed ahead, its twisted metal architecture still standing despite centuries of neglect. Her small team of 3 researchers followed behind, their helmet lights cutting through the perpetual twilight. They entered through a collapsed doorway. Inside, the walls were covered in crystalline formations that glowed faintly blue. Keiko ran her scanner across them, fascinated by the readings. The crystals hummed with residual energy, like batteries that refused to die. "These structures go deep underground," she said, checking her data pad. "There's a massive chamber about 2 kilometers down." Her team spent hours documenting the upper levels. Strange equipment lined the corridors, purpose unknown. The architecture itself seemed designed to contain something, with reinforced walls and multiple security checkpoints leading downward. Keiko ventured deeper, following a narrow passage that branched away from the main route. The crystals grew larger here, pulsing with a rhythm that almost seemed alive. She was so focused on her scanner that she didn't notice the floor beneath her feet beginning to crack. The collapse was sudden. The ancient structure gave way, and Keiko tumbled through darkness, her scream cut short as she hit the ground hard. Dust filled her helmet. Alarms beeped warnings about her suit's integrity. Above her, the passage had sealed itself with tons of rubble. "Martinez? Anyone?" She called into her radio. Only static answered. Keiko stood slowly, checking for injuries. Bruised but alive. Her suit lights revealed she had fallen into an enormous chamber, far larger than anything they had found above. And at its center, something impossible waited. The creature was immense. Even collapsed on the ground, it was the size of a small spacecraft. Its body resembled a dragon from Earth's ancient legends, but its scales were translucent, like living crystal. Massive wings lay folded against its skeletal frame, torn and withered. Energy chains, still glowing after all these centuries, bound its legs and neck to the floor. Keiko's breath caught. The creature was barely alive. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, painful movements. Its eyes, clouded and dim, opened slowly to look at her. Then she felt it. A pressure in her mind, like a whisper made of feelings rather than words. Desperation. Suffering. And one overwhelming need that transcended language. Thirst. The creature was dying of thirst. Had been dying for centuries, kept alive by the cruel stasis fields that flickered around its body. Unable to die, unable to drink, trapped in endless agony. Keiko approached slowly, her heart pounding. The creature's telepathic presence grew stronger. Images flooded her mind. A proud species swimming through space itself, feeding on starlight. A war. Imprisonment. Torture designed to last forever. The dragon's head lifted slightly, every movement an obvious effort. Its eyes focused on her with desperate hope. In her mind she felt its plea again. A single word in a language she shouldn't understand but somehow did. Water. Keiko looked down at her suit's water supply. She had enough for 48 hours, maybe less. Her team couldn't reach her for at least 36 hours, trapped on the other side of the cave-in. Every sip she shared reduced her own chances of survival. The dragon watched her, waiting. After 763 years of suffering, it had learned not to expect mercy. But it had never met a human before. Keiko's hand trembled as she reached for her water canteen. The suit's display showed her remaining supply in bright red numbers. 42 hours of water left. Her rescue team needed at least 36 hours to dig through the rubble safely. She looked at the dying creature before her. Its scales, once beautiful, were now dull and cracked like dried earth. The energy chains hummed with ancient power, keeping it locked in place. Keeping it alive. Keeping it suffering. "Who did this to you?" Keiko whispered. The dragon's mind touched hers again, gentler this time. Images flowed like a sad movie. She saw the Vorathai, a powerful empire that conquered worlds. They had discovered the Lumivores, the dragon's people, floating peacefully in the depths of space. The Lumivores were special. They could drink starlight and create water from their own bodies. Pure, endless water. The Vorathai wanted that power. They captured the Lumivores one by one. They drained them, used them as living batteries for their weapons and ships. When the dragons refused to help, the Vorathai made them suffer. This dragon Vexthera had been their leader. It had said no. It had fought back. So they made an example. They chained Vexthera in this prison and took away the one thing every living creature needs: water. The stasis field kept it alive, unable to die, unable to drink, for over 700 years. Keiko felt tears on her cheeks. The Vorathai are gone now. They've been extinct for centuries. Vexthera's response came as a feeling of hollow satisfaction. The Empire had destroyed itself eventually, but that knowledge brought no comfort. The dragon was still here. Still trapped. Still dying by inches. I need to think, Keiko said, backing away. She sat against the chamber wall, her mind racing. The logical choice was clear. She needed every drop of water to survive until rescue arrived. Sharing with the dragon was foolish. Might not even help. The creature was too far gone, too damaged by centuries of torture. Her water might just delay its death by hours instead of ending its suffering. But Keiko kept thinking about the images Vexthera had shared. A civilization of artists and dreamers, wiped out because they refused to become weapons. She thought about 700 years of thirst. 700 years of hoping for mercy that never came. She checked her suit systems again. The cave-in had damaged her oxygen recycler slightly. She could stretch her water to 40 hours if she was careful. That gave her a 6-hour window if everything went perfectly. If everything went perfectly. Keiko stood and walked back to the dragon. Vexthera's eyes followed her, filled with ancient pain. The creature expected nothing. It had learned that lesson long ago. My name is Keiko, she said softly. I'm a human. We're new to this galaxy. We don't know all the rules yet. She unscrewed her canteen. But we have one rule of our own. When someone is suffering, we help. Even if it's stupid. Even if it costs us. She held the canteen near the dragon's mouth. Vexthera stared at her in disbelief. The telepathic connection flooded with confusion, hope, and fear of disappointment. Drink, Keiko said. Not too much. We have to share. The dragon's mouth opened slowly. Keiko poured carefully, just a small amount. The water touched Vexthera's tongue, and the creature's entire body shuddered. A sound escaped its throat, something between a sob and a sigh. The first drink in 763 years. Keiko watched as faint light began to glow beneath the dragon's scales. Just a flicker, barely visible, but it was there. Life responding to kindness. She sealed the canteen and checked her supply. 39 hours left. We're going to get through this together, she told the dragon. I promise. Vexthera's mind touched hers once more, and this time Keiko felt something new in the ancient creature's thoughts. Something it hadn't felt in centuries. Hope. Hours passed in the dim chamber. Keiko gave Vexthera small sips of water every few hours, rationing carefully. Each time the dragon's scales brightened a little more. The dull, lifeless crystal began to show hints of color. Blues and purples swirled beneath the surface like oil on water. Between drinks they talked. Not with words but with thoughts and feelings. Vexthera showed Keiko memories of its home. The Lumivores had lived in the space between stars, swimming through clouds of cosmic dust. They had sung songs that made nebulas dance. They had created art from pure light. You were beautiful, Keiko said, sitting beside the enormous head. She had stopped being afraid hours ago. Now she just felt sad for everything that had been lost. Vexthera shared a memory of its children. Dozens of young dragons, playing in the rings of a gas giant, their laughter echoing through the void. All gone now. All drained by the Vorathai machines. Keiko wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you. The dragon's confusion washed over her. Sorry? Why would she apologize? She had done nothing wrong. Humans hadn't even left their planet when the Lumivores were destroyed. Because someone should say it, Keiko explained. Someone should acknowledge what was taken from you. What was taken from the galaxy. This concept seemed strange to Vexthera. In all its centuries of imprisonment, no one had ever expressed sympathy. The Vorathai had been proud of their cruelty. They had brought others to see the chained dragon as a warning. Never had anyone said they were sorry. Keiko checked her water supply again. 23 hours left. Her radio still crackled with static. The rescue team was working, but the collapsed tunnel was unstable. They had to move slowly. She turned her attention to the energy chains. They were old technology but still functional. Her scanner showed they were keyed to Vorathai biological signatures. Only someone with their DNA could release the locks. But the Vorathai are extinct, Keiko muttered. She examined the chains more closely. These systems are ancient. They probably don't have modern security updates. Vexthera watched with growing interest as Keiko pulled out her multi-tool. She connected it to the chain's control node, studying the data flow. The system was sophisticated, but it was also 800 years old. It had vulnerabilities. My species is good at breaking things we shouldn't break, Keiko said with a small smile. We're curious, stubborn. We don't accept that something is impossible just because we're told it is. She worked for hours, her fingers flying over her data pad. The code was complex, written in a dead language by a dead civilization. But code was code. Patterns were patterns. And humans had been hackers long before they reached the stars. Vexthera gave her another small drink of water. Keiko had stopped counting her remaining supply. If she died trying to free this creature, at least she would die doing something that mattered. The dragon's mind touched hers gently. It showed her an image of Earth. Vexthera had heard stories about humans. The galaxy called them dangerous because they were unpredictable. They did things that made no logical sense. They risked their lives for strangers. They cried over creatures they had just met. They chose compassion when survival demanded cruelty. Is that really so strange? Keiko asked. Vexthera's answer was yes. In a galaxy where most species valued strength and conquest, humanity's weakness for mercy was considered a fatal flaw. Other races believed humans would destroy themselves with their own kindness. Maybe, Keiko said, returning to her work. But I'd rather die being kind than live being cruel. Her multi-tool beeped. She had found a backdoor in the ancient code. The system had never been programmed to recognize human DNA because humans didn't exist yet when it was built. That was its weakness. Keiko's fingers paused over the final command. This would drain her suit's power reserves. Her oxygen recycler would fail in 12 hours instead of 23. She looked at Vexthera. The dragon watched her with eyes that glowed faintly with returning life. Keiko pressed execute. The energy chains flickered. For the first time in 763 years, their constant hum wavered. Keiko held her breath as lines of code scrolled across her data pad. The ancient system fought against her commands, but slowly, inevitably, it began to fail. Sparks flew from the control nodes. The blue glow of the chains dimmed, brightened, then dimmed again. Vexthera's entire body tensed. The dragon had dreamed of this moment for centuries, but had long ago stopped believing it could ever come. With a final electronic screech, the chains died. The energy fields collapsed. The locks opened with heavy metallic clanks that echoed through the chamber. Vexthera was free. The dragon tried to move but immediately collapsed. Its legs couldn't support its weight after so long in chains. Muscles that hadn't worked in centuries refused to respond. Vexthera's mind flooded with frustration and despair. Free from the chains but still a prisoner in its own broken body. It's okay, Keiko said quickly, rushing to the dragon's side. You need time. Your body needs to remember how to work. She checked her suit's displays. The power drain from breaking the chains had been worse than expected. Her oxygen recycler was failing faster now. 10 hours left, maybe less. Her water supply showed 6 hours remaining. The rescue team was still at least 12 hours away. Keiko did the math in her head. She wouldn't make it. But Vexthera was free. That had to be enough. She unscrewed her canteen and offered the dragon more water. Here. You need this more than I do. Vexthera's mind protested. The dragon could sense Keiko's failing systems. It understood what she had sacrificed. This human had given everything to free a creature she had just met. It made no sense. It was beautiful and terrible and completely irrational. Drink, Keiko insisted. Please. The dragon drank. This time it took more than just a sip. It drank deeply, desperately, trying to restore what had been stolen over centuries of torture. The water flowed through Vexthera's body like electricity through dead circuits, waking systems that had been dormant for so long. Keiko watched as the transformation began. The dragon's scales started to glow from within, not just flickering now but shining. Colors bloomed across its body. Deep blues, brilliant purples, shimmering greens. The wings, torn and withered, began to heal. New membrane grew between the skeletal framework, translucent and glowing like stained glass. Vexthera's body drew in the faint stellar radiation that filtered through cracks in the facility above. The lumivores had evolved to feed on starlight, and even after centuries of starvation, that ability remained. The dragon's chest expanded as it took its first real breath in what felt like forever. Slowly, painfully, Vexthera stood. The movement was shaky at first, but strength was returning. The dragon spread its wings and they caught the dim light, casting rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Keiko smiled even as her suit alarms beeped more urgently. Her oxygen was dropping. Her vision was getting fuzzy at the edges. But she had done it. She had freed Vexthera. She had ended centuries of suffering. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for surviving. Thank you for holding on until someone could find you." Vexthera looked down at the small human who had saved it. The dragon's mind filled with an emotion it had thought lost forever. Gratitude. But more than that. Love for this strange, foolish, wonderful creature who had chosen mercy over survival. The dragon's body began to glow brighter. Deep within its chest, ancient biological systems activated. The Lumivores had been able to convert stellar radiation into water. It was their gift, their purpose. Vexthera had not used this ability in centuries, but it remembered. The dragon opened its mouth and pure, clear water flowed out like a fountain. Not just a trickle but gallons of it pooled on the chamber floor. Water created from starlight and gratitude and the joy of being alive. Keiko stared in amazement. Her suit automatically began collecting the water, refilling her reserves. Vexthera's voice finally entered her mind, not as feelings but as words. "Now, small savior, I save you in return." The rescue team broke through the rubble 20 hours later. Martinez and Chin rushed into the chamber with emergency equipment ready, then stopped in their tracks. They had expected to find Keiko injured or dying. Instead, they found her sitting peacefully beside an impossible creature that glowed like a living aurora. "Doc," Martinez whispered, his voice filled with shock. "What is that?" "This is Vexthera," Keiko said calmly, her hand resting on the dragon's leg. "The last of the Lumivores. I found them imprisoned here. We freed each other." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A Lumivore alive. A species thought extinct for 8 centuries had survived. Scientists, historians, and diplomats from 100 worlds wanted to meet Vexthera. They wanted to study it, document it, preserve its genetic material. But Vexthera wanted only one thing: to stay with Keiko. The dragon refused to leave her side. When officials tried to take Vexthera to research facilities, the dragon simply said no. When they offered it wealth and honor, Vexthera declined. The human girl had shown mercy when no one else would. That bond could not be broken. Keiko and Vexthera returned to Earth together. The sight of a crystal dragon flying through Earth's sky caused worldwide celebration. Children pointed and laughed with joy. Artists tried to capture its beauty. Everyone wanted to hear the story of the girl who freed the dragon with nothing but compassion and a canteen of water. But Keiko didn't want fame. She wanted to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Together with Vexthera, she established the Lumivore Memorial Foundation. It would preserve the history of extinct species and work to prevent future atrocities. The galaxy needed to remember what had been lost. It needed to learn from its cruelty. Vexthera became an ambassador of sorts, traveling to different worlds and sharing stories of the Lumivores. The dragon spoke of its people's art and music, their philosophy and dreams. It showed the galaxy what beauty had been destroyed by greed and violence. And everywhere Vexthera went, it created water. Fresh, pure water for drought-stricken colonies. Water for refugees fleeing war. Water for anyone who needed it. The dragon gave freely what had been denied to it for so long. Each drop was an act of defiance against the cruelty it had endured. One evening, Keiko and Vexthera stood on a hill overlooking a human colony on the edge of known space. Engineers had built special projectors that mimicked the cosmic phenomena the Lumivores once danced through. Artificial auroras flowed across the sky in blues and purples and greens. It wasn't the same as swimming through real nebulas, but it was beautiful. "Do you miss them?" Keiko asked quietly. "Your family. Your people." Vexthera's mind touched hers gently. "Yes. Every day." The grief would never truly fade. But something else had grown alongside that grief. Hope, purpose, and a new kind of family. "Human scientists have been studying my genetic material," the dragon said. "They believe it might be possible to create new Lumivores someday. Not clones, but true children born from preserved DNA and advanced technology. It would take decades, maybe centuries. But it could happen." Keiko smiled. "Your people could live again." "Perhaps," Vexthera agreed. "But even if they cannot, I have learned something important. I learned it from a small human who gave water to a dying stranger. Kindness is its own form of immortality. The Lumivores created beauty and gave freely. You did the same for me. That spirit survives as long as anyone chooses mercy over cruelty." Below them, human children played in fountains of water that Vexthera had created. They splashed and laughed, innocent and joyful. Other species watched with curiosity. Humans were still considered strange by the rest of the galaxy. Too emotional. Too quick to help. Too willing to risk everything for compassion. Vexthara's scales glowed brighter as it watched the children play. Your species is young, the dragon said. You make foolish choices. You cry over strangers. You give water to dying creatures when you need it to survive. The dragon turned to look at Keiko. Perhaps that is exactly what this galaxy needs. Perhaps that is what will save us all.